Brian Powell of I Run Far here with Sarah Bard before Ultravasan 2016. How are you, Sarah?
Pretty good. How are you?
All right. Is this your first trip to Sweden?
It is not. I've been to Stockholm briefly about 10 years ago, but I'd say this is my first real trip.
Yeah. Well, before we get into this weekend's race, I'd love to know a little bit more about your running background. How did you get into sports? Did you do other sports first?
No.
No?
I'm not good at other sports. Anything that requires real coordination, not my strength. But I have been running since I was in junior high, maybe slightly younger but less formalized. And after college, I only ran cross country in college, not track. And then
Did you compete in other sports, or did you
No.
you just want to do cross country?
Yeah, well, the college I went to didn't have a track team. They allowed for, if you were on the cross country team, you could compete in track, but as an individual. So it wasn't as fun because there wasn't the team aspect of it. And then after college, I got into marathons. I took some time off, and then I got into marathoning, and I did that for about 10 years, about 2 a year, and then started to get a little bit bored, not about racing, but about the training. So I was looking for something to switch it up.
You had a routine that you...
Exactly. It was like, and it started to get very, very monotonous because at some point I reached sort of my peak speed, it felt like. So I was really just like looking to take off seconds every time, which in training can be a little bit frustrating.
Yeah. So what was your first exposure to ultras then?
I ran the JFK 50 in 2014. I had heard about it. I was living in Virginia several years earlier and knew a couple of people who had run it. And I was living on the East Coast at the time. So I knew the course just by living in the area. I hadn't actually run on that Appalachian Trail section or anything like that. And so I thought that that would be an easy one to just buy a quick plane ticket down to, which is what I did. I made a decision like a month before. And thought, well, okay, maybe I can run 50 miles, and I did.
And it went pretty well for you?
It did go pretty well, yeah. I'm glad that I took a low-key approach to it because I think it gave me a little bit of wiggle room if it didn't go well. But yeah, it was a great experience and a great race, I think, to start with. There's a lot of aid along the way, and so even if you don't know what you're doing, they kind of handhold you.
Gotcha. And that was October 2014, and by September the following year, you were running the World 100K.
Yeah. I had no idea that the JFK is one of the races that is used to help qualify you for the team. So actually, after JFK, I signed up for ComFit, hoping to make the 50K team, but then later found out that I had qualified for the 100K and was in the consideration for making the team.
And you were considered and chosen and ran to 4th place.
Yeah, it was great.
How did that go for you?
It went well. I mean, I think when I then found out that I was qualified for both the 50K and the 100K, it seemed to me that the 100K was probably more of my strength. I think the longer the distance at this point, the better. Relatively. I know that I could run like a 48-hour race, and maybe that's not going to be my strength, but we'll see.
Fair enough.
But yeah, it was great, and it was the sort of course I think that suits me. It was I was living in Boston, so running along the Charles, there's a 6-mile loop. It's very similar, so I think I was prepared for the monotony of a loop course and the predictability of a loop course, and it's fun and fast. So
and you nailed it. And you then went on to run a not loop course at Comrades.
Yes.
And had another really good showing.
Yeah, no, that race went well too. I did not think that race on paper went really well. The race itself was harder, I would say. Is
that because of the hills, or what was harder than you expected at Comrades? I
think I just had some, like, my legs started hurting very early. I got some tightness in my foot that led to some tightness in my calf, that led to some tightness in my hamstring, and it just seemed to like work its way up my leg.
The whole kinetic chain was fighting
breaking
back.
down. Breaking down along the way. So I thought it happened very early in the race, and I think for any runner, when that happens, you're like, well, it could be fine, but it could also be the next step. So I just basically took it kilometer by kilometer, saying, well, it hasn't broken down yet, so I'm just going to keep going. And it held out.
Do you think that makes you stronger for the future, like mentally?
I thought a lot. Well, I thought a lot about how Ellie hadn't been able to enter because she was injured, and I was like, well, I know that she'd want to be out here if she could, and here I am, so I might as well just like keep going until my body doesn't let me anymore. And even though my mind was saying your body's not letting you, I knew that it physically actually was. So
yeah,
I should just keep going.
And now you're here in Sweden for the Ultravasan. 90K on a little bit of pavement, mostly dirt road, and some, as you saw this morning, some moderately technical trail. What has you, I mean, I guess you ran JFK, so you've been on the Appalachian Trail section.
Yeah.
Sort of trying a little more in the trail area or off pavement area. What's got you thinking about that?
So Peter, who's the race director, he was at Comrades and crewed for Kaisa and I along the way. And I had actually met him at the World Championship as well, so we had seen each other at races before. And after Comrades, he invited me to do this race and sort of joked like, it's a trail race, but you could it's good. And then he told me Jonas's time from the previous year, sort of to give me like a benchmark of what kind of trail race it might be. So I really wasn't planning on running this race, and then he proposed it, and I said, okay, 5 minutes later.
And how soon after Comrades was this?
This was I think the dinner that night. So
you hadn't sworn off ultras yet?
No, I swore it off. I'm usually like the first 10 minutes if somebody asks me if I'm going to do another race. I'm like, well, give me a second.
Yeah.
Because that was awful. So yeah, I made the decision pretty quick. But it seemed like a good opportunity. And it was the field. A few people have dropped out because of injury or timing or whatever, but the field is still very competitive and was very competitive at the time, so I'm very excited about that.
It's kind of interesting. There's people from a lot of backgrounds.
Yeah.
To me, like Yasmin, who's run a decent amount of like longer trail stuff, and you with a little bit of experience in faster ultras, and then Isabella.
Yeah.
2:33 marathoner.
Yeah.
Making an ultra debut, so.
Right. I think it'll be a lot of fun to just see how that happens. I think for Isabella, I mean, it could be a very interesting race because sometimes if you have that speed, and this course allows for that speed in many places.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes the naivete of an ultra can really benefit you. So I think it will be a lot of fun.
Like your first JFK?
Yeah. I think just not knowing what you're getting yourself into, as long as you're smart. And she seemed from her pre-race interview that she is pretty smart about it. She's like, I just want to finish. And so I think that, it could be a really good dynamic out there.
How do you think having the sort of 15K of technical, about 15K into the race, not that far into the race is going to change things up?
I'm happy that it's early in the race.
Yeah.
So it's always nice to sort of take it a little bit easy in the beginning so you don't blow up later. So maybe it will just help to avoid that.
So your plan is to kind of relax through that rather than fight through it, since it's not your forte, maybe? Yeah,
I'm probably not going to go for the sprint prees.
Yeah.
There, I've relinquished that at this point. I'll just see how it goes and see what happens. I would like to maintain some level of contact if that's an issue, but I'm definitely not going to try to destroy myself on that part.
Yeah.
We'll just see how it goes.
All right, well, best of luck out there.
Thanks.
And enjoy the course.
Thanks.